well, the way that I started my show, not only with you, was with a lot of people that I just wanted to ask them questions. What we saw during lockdown, and we've seen sort of in the last couple of years, is that, let's just phrase it as every Tom, Dick and Harry has a podcast. Do you think that's because people want to be heard? Or do you think that's because they genuinely want to listen to what others have to say? Is it their voice or is it their guest voice that they care more about? Be brutal, mate, if you want to be.
I think there are a lot of people started podcasts during COVID because they saw it as a marketing tool. And many of those people don't have podcasts anymore. They've stopped because it was, I've got some time, I'm going to do a podcast. And I've got Zoom and it's easy to record. And hey, you know what? I can do a podcast. Yeah. Most of those people couldn't sustain it. And sustainability is hard. Hats off to you for keeping this podcast going. I mean, that's phenomenal. When people look at the numbers, it's like, really? You've got that many? It's like, yeah. And so I think a lot of people got into podcasting for the wrong reason. And so I think those group have pretty much died out. The next group of people who are still doing it, there's a group of people who are purely in it because it's part of their marketing funnel. And they just see it as a marketing tool, and that's what it is, which is fine, because I think that podcasting can work that way as an engagement tool to help you let people know what you do, how you do it, and you can bring on some guests who will, again, fuel interest in your activities. So there's a whole side to it that's that. Then I think there's another side where it's not hobbyists, but it is genuinely people who, like yourself, who are putting together content that is to educate, inform, and maybe mildly entertain people as well. And it just...
mildly entertain. I'm going to keep holding that one, mate.
But they do it not because it's necessarily going to generate any more revenue in their organization, but because it's a great way with, again, this long tail of letting people know who you are, what you do, what you stand for. And those people are unfortunately fewer and far between. The fourth group of people are your classic radio broadcasters who, in the early days anyway, just saw podcasting as, hey, we're going to repackage some of our content. And I used to do that. Yeah. I'm just going to, strip it down, repackage it, and throw it out. It's now a podcast, which I think that avenue, it's not going to go away because they've already got content and it's there, but it's not really packaged well for podcasts. And it needs another element that many of our professional organizations, even in country and around the region, globally, haven't figured out yet, because they're just saying, I've got all this content, I'm just going to put it out. But people don't want to listen to that. So what's the context to it? How are you contextualizing? How are you picking and choosing? How are you bringing a little bit more of a human element? Because our standard media that in early podcasts, I think a lot of people imitated that, is wallpaper media. So when you think about radio, it's wallpaper. How do you listen to radio? You put it on in your car, you put it on at home, you put it on in the office, it plays through and it's done. Podcast you pick. Podcasting, for the most part, you listen to with headphones on. Podcasting's personal. You can pause it. You've decided to listen to it. So it's a whole different thing. And listening to something in your ear where you and I are talking directly to our audience, as opposed to something where it's just in the background, is a different type of media. And I think that's where podcasting's young, 23 years. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's evolving enormously, and the ability to get into podcasting is getting easier and easier and easier. But while it's easier to record, it's easier to put stuff up if you use Anchor and then distribute it. There's all sorts of different ways you can distribute your content, which is great. But you got to keep doing that. And I think that's where anyone can do one. Anyone can do a week's worth of podcast. Anyone can do 6. Yeah. Can you do 100? Yeah. Can you do 200? And I think that becomes where podcasting really changes things. And so there's these multiple groups that are all happening at the same time. And then you and I as listeners have to choose. And where do you pick? And what do you pick? And I think that becomes a challenge. And if you're like me, you've got a stable group of 6 or 7 things that you always go back to. Yeah. Because you like the flow, you like the tone, you like the way they deliver the content, and you'll keep listening to it. And I think that, to me, is is the gold of podcasting.